Gordon Quinn had carefully built his life piece by piece, exactly the way his father had once taught him. At 38, he was the proud owner of Quinn Construction, a mid-sized firm known for commercial renovations. The business wasn't glamorous, but it was dependable: 15 full-time employees, contracts scheduled half a year in advance, and a reputation for completing projects earlier than expected. 7 years earlier, Gordon met Camille Hutchkins at a charity gala his company had sponsored. She'd been 26 at the time, working as an events coordinator, strikingly beautiful in that effortless way that made most men lose their sense of reason. Gordon usually wasn't the type to lose his, but he'd been lonely after his mother's passing, and Camille filled spaces in his life he hadn't even realized were empty. They married within a year, and 2 years later, their daughter Sophie arrived, a 5-year-old now with Camille's dark hair and, as Gordon liked to believe, his own gray eyes. But lately, the life he'd built so solidly had started to feel unsteady. Camille had grown distant, always on her phone, stepping into other rooms to take calls. When Gordon asked about it, she blamed the stress of her new position as director of events at the Grand View Hotel. He wanted to trust her explanation. The vasectomy had been her idea. "Gordon, we have Sophie. She's perfect. Why risk another pregnancy at my age?" Camille had said, her hand resting gently on his arm. "Besides, you said yourself you want to focus on expanding the business." It had all sounded so logical that Gordon agreed, though a quiet unease had lingered in the back of his mind. He brushed it aside. Gordon Quinn was a problem solver, not a man who wasted time worrying. Dr. Victor Pugh came highly recommended. The consultation was brief but efficient. Pugh was in his mid-40s, confident in that polished way surgeons often are: steel gray hair, practiced movements, steady hands. "Simple procedure, Mr. Quinn. You'll be in and out within the hour. Drive," Pugh said, barely glancing up as he flipped through the consent forms. On the morning of the procedure, Camille drove him to the clinic. She appeared nervous, checking her phone over and over in the waiting room. "You okay?" Gordon asked, noticing her unease. "Just worried about you," she said softly, leaning in to kiss his forehead. But her eyes shifted toward the hallway where Drive. Pugh had just disappeared. Moments later, the anesthesia began to take effect. Gordon felt his consciousness slipping as the surgical nurse, a young woman with tired eyes, adjusted the monitors above him. "Count backward from 10, Mr. Quinn," she instructed. 10, 9, 8. Then nothing, until the voices started pulling him back toward awareness. Gordon's mind drifted in that strange in-between place where sleep and wakefulness blur. He could hear voices but couldn't open his eyes, couldn't move. The anesthesia still held him trapped, his body unresponsive while his mind floated just beneath the surface. "Is his wife still in the waiting room?" came Drive. Pugh's low, tense voice. "Yes, doctor," replied the nurse, her tone uncertain. "Good. After we're done, I want you to give her this envelope. Don't let him see it. She's expecting it." Gordon's pulse spiked, though the monitors didn't sound any alarms. The drugs coursing through his veins kept him perfectly still, even as his thoughts snapped into sharp focus. His body was paralyzed, but his mind screamed with alarm. "Doctor, I'm not comfortable with this," the nurse said hesitantly. "You're paid to assist, not to form opinions," Pugh replied sharply. "Give her the envelope once he's in recovery. She'll be waiting in the consultation room alone." "Understood." A short pause. "Yes, doctor." He heard the faint sound of paper rustling, then footsteps retreating. Gordon forced himself to remain completely still while the procedure continued, his brain racing through 1,000 possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. What was in that envelope? Why did Camille know about it? How long had this been going on? Half an hour later, they wheeled him into the recovery room. He kept his eyes barely open, feigning unconsciousness while watching through narrow slits. The nurse, her name tag read Torres, moved nervously around the room, glancing often toward the door. A corner of the envelope peeked out from her scrub pocket. Moments later, Camille appeared in the doorway. "Can I see him?" she asked. "He's still coming out of it," Nurse Torres replied. "Doctor Pugh wanted to speak with you first. Consultation room 2, down the hall." "Perfect," Camille said. "Perfect," Gordon echoed silently. They think I'm still asleep. As soon as Camille left, he forced his eyes fully open. Water, he croaked. Nurse Torres jumped slightly. Mr. Quinn, you're awake earlier than expected. Bathroom, he managed to say, his voice rough. She moved to help him, but he waved her off. I got it. Despite the dizziness from the lingering anesthesia, Gordon stood and shuffled toward the small bathroom attached to the recovery room. Once inside, he locked the door and moved quickly to the small window overlooking the hallway. From that vantage point, he could see straight into consultation room 2 through its interior glass panel. Camille sat across from Dr. Pugh. Gordon watched as Pugh slid an envelope, the same one, across the table toward her. Camille's fingers trembled as she opened it. Her expression shifted rapidly. First shock, then something that looked like satisfaction, followed by tears. But Gordon recognized those tears. They weren't from sorrow. He'd been married to Camille for 6 years. He knew her tells. These were tears of relief. Dr. Pugh reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The gesture was far too familiar, too intimate. They spoke, though Gordon couldn't make out the words, but the body language said everything. This wasn't a doctor comforting a patient's wife. It was something deeper, secret. Camille glanced toward the hallway, slipped the envelope into her purse, and stood. Pugh rose as well, and for a heartbeat, their hands lingered together. Gordon moved away from the window and vomited violently into the toilet. The anesthesia, the betrayal, the rage churning through him, all of it fused into a wave of pure nausea. When he finally stepped out, pale and shaking, Nurse Torres looked alarmed. Mr. Quinn, you should sit down, she urged. Where's my wife? She just left. Said she had an emergency at work. She'll pick you up in about 2 hours, once you're cleared to leave. Of course she did, Gordon muttered, nodding faintly. His mind was already calculating his next move. Can I rest here? Close the door, please. Of course. I'll check on you in 30 minutes. As soon as she was gone, Gordon pulled out his phone. The anesthesia was wearing off faster than expected. Maybe his metabolism, or maybe sheer adrenaline burning it away. He opened his secure notes app and began typing everything he'd seen and heard, every word, every gesture. Then he made a call. Wayne Riddle Investigations. Wayne, it's Gordon. I need you to do something for me, and I need absolute discretion. Wayne Riddle had been Gordon's closest friend since high school. After 2 decades in Army SID, he'd started his own private investigation firm back in their hometown. Reliable, loyal, thorough, name it. I need you to dig into a drive. Victor Pugh, where he's worked, any complaints, his finances, everything. And I need surveillance on Camille. Starting today. A pause. Gordon, what's this about? I'll explain later. Can you do it? Consider it done. I'll have preliminary results by tomorrow morning. Gordon ended the call just as Nurse Torres knocked gently on the door. Mr. Quinn, how are you feeling? Better, he said, forcing a weak smile as he opened it. Sorry about that. The anesthesia always hits me hard. She looked relieved. That's completely normal. Try to rest now. Your wife will be back soon. But Gordon didn't rest. He lay there staring up at the ceiling, his mind assembling pieces of a puzzle he hadn't realized existed until 2 hours earlier. Whatever was inside that envelope, it was powerful enough for a surgeon to risk his license. Significant enough for Camille to vanish right after the operation. And intimate enough for the two of them to touch hands like lovers. Gordon Quinn was going to uncover exactly what it was.